Πέρα από το πρόβλημα της επιβίωσης, της προσαρμογής και της γλώσσας, οι μετανάστες έχουν να αντιμετωπίσουν και την αυξανόμενη δυσφορία απέναντί τους. Παρότι η Αμερική είναι χώρα μεταναστών, οι Αμερικανοί απεχθάνονταν τους μετανάστες, ιδίως όσους προέρχονταν από τις φτωχές χώρες του Ευρωπαϊκού Νότου.
Americans who didn't like immigrants, the Immigration Restriction League was out to stop immigrants. They didn't want Southern Europeans, they didn't want Eastern Europeans, they didn't want to see Jews or Catholics or anybody else. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, what race were they? Who were they? Were they Greeks and Italians and Spaniards? Were they Roman Catholics? No. No. We want the same people that brought our heritage, that created this nation. We don't want people who are not from that background.
At the time when the Greeks arrived in the greatest number, the Ku Klux Klan was coming back as a powerful force in the American South. And the Klan has historically been against the African Americans. The new Klan added Catholics and Jews almost as strongly as blacks, and foreigners in general, and Greeks in particular. For some reason, Greeks seemed to irritate the Klan. Quite a bit of rancor, and there was physical battles with the Ku Klux Klan. And in Florida, actually, where Tarpon Springs was, there were gunfights and burning of boats and physical warfare with some of the people from Florida. In the South and in the West, if there was a law against that restricted blacks, it also applied to Greeks. So when you went to the movie house, the bottom floor, the good seats, were for the white people, and the seats upstairs were for the others. And we were among the others. There's even a newspaper headline in one of these newspapers that says, "White woman seen with Greek." This was a headline. When the Greeks started opening restaurants, the conservative Americans responded. There's one famous sign in California, "No rats, no Greeks, all American." Dirty Greek was a very common, you didn't say Greek without putting dirty in front of it.
Μια μερίδα πολιτών και μέσων ενημέρωσης αρχίζουν να κατηγορούν τους Βρωμοέλληνες για όλα τα κακά της αμερικανικής κοινωνίας, για τις ασθένειες, την βρώμα και την αυξανόμενη εγκληματικότητα. Η αστυνομία τους βάζει στο στόχαστρο. Στο Σικάγο, σύμφωνα με τα επίσημα εγκληματολογικά χρονικά, οι Έλληνες καταλαμβάνουν 3 πρώτες θέσεις ανάμεσα σε όλους τους μετανάστες. Πρώτη στους βιασμούς και στις απαγωγές, στη διασάλευση της δημόσιας τάξης και στις συλλήψεις από την αστυνομία, με μεγάλη διαφορά μάλιστα.
The statistics grew and increased, so suddenly it made the Greeks look like criminals, because the Greeks were always breaking public ordinances.
And there's some truth to that, because there's a basis for it. In the old Greek towns, used to be male-dominated, and just like in the Chinatowns, wherever there's lots of males, well, there's going to be a little gambling, there's going to be a little prostitution, that's where the criminals may gather. So there is a connection of the Greeks to the underworld, but again on the fringes rather than as the organizers, and you see that in the movies quite a bit.
Ασφαλώς μεταξύ των Ελλήνων υπήρχαν αρκετοί εγκληματίες, αλλά με τη σειρά τους οι Έλληνες μετανάστες υπήρξαν θύματα προκατάληψης και στερεοτύπων που είχαν δημιουργηθεί σε βάρος τους.
The Greeks were usually associated with petty crime. Very often it was with the kathinion, because the police couldn't understand why all these men were sitting around drinking coffee. They thought for sure something else is going on. They were constantly raiding the coffee houses, and if they found them playing cards, or they had a dancer, or they were doing something, they arrested them for an illegal cabaret or for illegal gambling. So there were lots of little arrests which didn't mean anything.
Greeks were often peddlers. That was a typical job for a Greek immigrant, selling fruits and vegetables in the street, selling candies and sweets. It was typical. The Greeks really were discriminated against because of their peddling, and they received many tickets from the police and were harassed by the police. The Greeks, the Italians, were in violent crimes. They certainly did their part. But on the whole, you didn't really have that. But discrimination and prejudice made them seem much worse than what they were. Because, remember, there were strong racist groups at that time trying to cut immigration.
Ακόμη και ανάμεσα στην εργατική τάξη, οι προκαταλήψεις εναντίον των Ελλήνων παραμένουν ισχυρές.
The message is, well, they're not Europeans, they're from over there, so they're all Greek. You know, the interesting part, and this is almost shocking, is when you were in Massachusetts and you were working in a mill, and you couldn't get into the union because you weren't a European. So the Greeks formed their own unions with Turks, Albanians, and Greeks had a union because they saw that they were together and they had to struggle against the others as a group.
Ανάμεσα στους λευκούς εργάτες και τα συνδικάτα που φτιάχνουν οι Έλληνες, οι συγκρούσεις είναι συχνές. Γιατί όταν απεργούν οι Αμερικανοί, οι εργοδότες χρησιμοποιούν τους Έλληνες ως απεργοσπάστες.
Strike. They say, we don't need you, we'll hire these Greeks. You know, a case like this happened in the year 1909 in Omaha. They weren't contract laborers, but they were brought in to break a strike. And that caused so much animosity in Omaha, Nebraska, that the Greeks were chased out of Greektown. And one of the great signs of discrimination against the Greeks.
Την αφορμή για τα επεισόδια δίνει ο Γιάννης Μασουρίδης, ένας μετανάστης στην πόλη Ομάχα, στην πολιτεία της Νεμπράσκα, που σκοτώνει έναν αστυνομικό μετά από μια λογομαχία. Σε συγκέντρωση των κατοίκων της πόλης, οι ομιλητές κατηγορούν όλους τους Έλληνες ότι δουλεύουν φθηνά, είναι βρώμικοι, μαζεύονται στα καφενεία όπου πολιτικολογούν ή χαρτοπέζουν και επιτίθενται στις γυναίκες. Οι κάτοικοι απαντούν με ένα πραγματικό πογκρόμ εναντίον της ελληνικής κοινότητας. Φωνάζοντας θάνατο στους Έλληνες, καίνε επί 6 ώρες την ελληνική συνοικία, καταστρέφουν όλα τα καταστήματα και βάζουν φωτιά στα σπίτια. Από τους 2.000 Έλληνες της πόλης θα παραμείνουν μετά τα επεισόδια μόνο 59 άτομα.
In at least 2 or 3 places, the Greek section of town was burnt down, and the Greeks were chased out for many different reasons, but always because the law was not supposed to, didn't apply to this group of people. And there was a famous labor dispute also in Washington, in which at the end the white workers sided against the Greek workers. And see, that's a strange division to think the Greeks as not being white. And the sheriff ran everybody out of town. They arrested all the Greeks. They put them on a boat, and they took them off on a boat, and they said, if you come back, we'll shoot you.
Κάτω από την πίεση της κοινής γνώμης, η αμερικανική κυβέρνηση περιορίζει ακόμη περισσότερο τη μετανάστευση, ιδίως από τις φτωχές χώρες της Νότιας Ευρώπης. Σύμφωνα με ένα νόμο που ψηφίζεται το 1921, μόνο 100 Έλληνες το χρόνο έχουν το δικαίωμα να μεταναστεύσουν στις Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες. Πολλοί διαλέγουν το δρόμο της παρανομίας. Θα χρειαστούν 2 ακόμη δεκαετίες και ένας παγκόσμιος πόλεμος για να αλλάξει η στάση των Αμερικανών.
During World War II, the image of Greeks changed. Only when Mussolini was defeated in Greece with the Ohi, that Greeks sort of came out and began to assert who they were.